from Transform Ed Consulting. It is my pleasure to welcome my dear buddy, Thad, my man Thad.
All right.
How you
Thanks for
doing,
having
buddy?
me. I'm great. Thanks so much for having me. Looking forward to
Great,
this.
great. Well, first thing I must do is give props to Cassandra Williams. Cassandra Williams is the parent of of Educational Innovation 360 Degrees, and she allows us to use her platform for our live chat. Now, let me introduce you officially. Thaddeus Gould Branson, PhD, is the CEO and principal of High Impact Departments LLC, which is devoted to helping colleges and universities adapt to the changing needs of students and society. Its emphasis is on program level training, planning, assessment, and process improvement. Dr. Gould Branson earned his degree in anthropology at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. His career spans 2 decades of higher education leadership, senior administration, teaching, and research at universities in the United States. For the past 5 years, Dr. Gould Branson has consulted with dozens of universities in the United States and the Middle East. The COVID-19 period has led to new clarity and inspiration for supporting universities at the department level. Thanks for being here, Thad.
Pleasure. Thanks so much
I
for
gotta
having me.
ask, how did you get to where you are today?
Well, it's interesting because I went into anthropology because I wanted to do research, and I thought that I wanted to just, you know, be involved with research and writing for my entire career. But I had this really great opportunity very early in my career, literally 2 years into my first faculty position at the University of New Hampshire, where I had the opportunity to be the founding director of a research center. And that gave me a taste of administration. And what I learned was, while I like the the opportunity of doing solitary research, what I like even better is bringing people together and collaborating with others, and having a even bigger impact on the research, service, and teaching mission of the university. And once I caught that bug, I just, I advanced in university administration, and then I reached a point where consulting just made sense for me. And now I've been traveling all over the world and worked for dozens of different colleges, universities, and schools, and a few different countries and several different states. And I'm just having a heck of a lot of fun working, collaborating with interesting people.
But I get the feeling that you are a student first type of person.
Yeah, I mean, really, that's the name of the game for me. I mean, the reason why I'm in education is because I see myself as a lifelong learner,
Mhm.
and it keeps me young, and it keeps me fresh, and it puts me in position where I can continually learn things from people, and often learning the answers to questions that I didn't even know to ask.
Right.
And so it is a great privilege to have such a career where I can be such a lifelong learner.
Now, are you still drawn to anthropology?
I'm always an anthropologist. I think that I bring my anthropological perspective in a variety of different ways. As an anthropologist, I think that I understand group dynamics better. It's made me a better listener, I think, than I would have been. It is certainly a critical thinker. Um, I understand the importance of ritual. When you look at something like strategic planning or any institutional process, there are aspects of it that's like, it's sort of a ritual that we come
Mhm.
together and we do things for certain social, it's sort of a social function. But the most important thing that anthropology has taught me is that it's taught me to not take things for granted,
Mhm.
and to know deep in my bones that an alternative future is possible.
Is possible.
That the way we do things, the things that we most take for granted
Mhm.
are strange. That we, you know, we um, We know that they are because if you look at the history of humanity, or you look at people in different cultures, um, you see all the myriad ways that people have done things in the past,
Hmm.
and that those things that we take for granted that you think are just fixed and frozen, an alternative future is possible, and it makes me um, optimistic, and I think a much more creative person than
Well,
an
our topic for
anthropologist.
today, the department is dead. Long live the department. How does anthropology and the things you've learned as an anthropologist fit into the title or the topic we're discussing tonight? The department is dead. Long live the department.
Well, as a consultant, I've come to to the reason why I'm a consultant working for institutions of higher education is because I want to help my colleagues adapt to a changing ecosystem so that we can continue to serve students well, we can continue to do research well, and we can continue to have a high quality of life in our work. Um, as an anthropologist, I bring the capacity to understand how institutions work and the relationship between people, the individual and the group, and to be able to analyze things. And what I see troubles me, frankly. I look across the landscape, the higher education landscape, and I see some really important challenges.
Well, then we better jump into this agenda so that we can discuss all of those challenges that you've seen. Adapting to a changing higher education ecosystem. What does that mean?
I think there are four highly disruptive factors that we face today. Four crises. It's a four-part crisis. One is we face a changing way of funding higher education. It's basically summed up in a declining public support for higher education, and a shift in that burden to the students and their families. The second is a demographic crisis, a demographic shift that's taken place, that we have fewer traditional college age students, and so we have to think differently about who is our student and how do we serve people over the course of a lifetime, and how do we bring more people into our campus who may not have been served by our campuses in the past. The third part of the crisis is the technological disruption, with information technology that changes the way we do business and also brings in new kinds of competition from providers that may not have been in our marketplace before.
Mm-hmm.
And the fourth, and I think for me the most important, because it's the one that we have some control over, and that is it's a crisis of mission. And a confusion, a public confusion about what is the purpose of higher education. Why do we exist? Who do we serve? Why do we serve them? And then it's not just a public confusion, that we ourselves on campuses have gotten distracted with mission creep.
Hold that one, and let's go into that a little bit deeper. But I want to go back to something you implied. You said there's a decline in public support. So are you speaking specifically and only of public institutions, or are you speaking about higher ed in general, even private higher education institutions?
I think there's an overall cultural shift that's taken place, certainly in the United States, over the course of my lifetime, and certainly since the middle part of the 20th century, where higher education is seen less and less as a public good that serves the public, and more as a private good. That it's it's about if you want an education, go out and get it and pay for it yourself, rather than saying, no, all kids are our kid. Everybody's kid is our kids, and we want to be part of a society which is optimistic and forward-looking, and that we've sort of forgotten that the successes of the past, the United States is sort of built in large measure on the successful university system that we've had, and that sort of erosion of that public commitment and that understanding that education is a public good has then led to declining funding of public schools, but also there's a shrinking pool of resources for research and grants and things that fund private institutions as well. So everybody is impacted, and
Mhm.
it creates, there are all kinds of implications for social justice,
Yeah.
for public health, public wellness, for
Right.
economic
Right.
viability, for competitiveness in a global market. All of these things are implicated in this shift in American values.
I think if we go back to ancient times, higher education was not meant for guys like you and me.
Sure.
Yeah.
Right.
And we speak about social justice. Well, an aspect of social justice is that everyone has an opportunity. Well, we were not on that list. Guys like you and me were not on that list
Sure.
for
No,
higher education.
I myself did not come from an elite family, and for me, education has made a world of difference in opening up the world to me, and
Right.
I am grateful for that opportunity. And I think that for folks like you and me, we have a duty to let other people in the club as well.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. All right, let's hop back to your comments about mission. And I think you wanted to say mission creep.
Yeah, what I see happening with institutions is that there's a real there's a lot of market pressure.
Mhm.
I don't want to get into the sort of the wonky jargon, but some people talk about the neoliberal turn of higher education, which I think there's a lot of for those of you. If that term neoliberalism means something to you, I think it is relevant for higher education, and I think it is something to resist and to think about alternative models. But what it comes down to, what's most important, is that there's such market pressure, and thinking about institutions as being competitive within the market, and trying to focus on getting money in the door. But what's so important, a university, a nonprofit institution, nonprofit university, nonprofit college, the role of money in our institutions is different from a private business.
Mhm.
The role of money in a business, if you have a for-profit business, you're doing well as a business because you're
You're making profit.
making profit. Revenue
Yeah, and you.
exceeds expenses, and you're doing great. That's what
Mhm.
a for-profit business is.
Mhm.
A nonprofit is mission driven. It's about a service. It's offering a public good, and
Mhm.
the role money in a nonprofit institution is an input, not an outcome,
Mm.
right? And we get really confused about what we're doing when we start measuring our success in terms of money in the door, rather
Well,
than
then,
are we satisfying our mission or not?
so what's your post-quarantine inspiration? Does that revolve around money, the input of money, and the good that it does for higher education and students?
No, it has to do with ever since I started doing consulting 5 years ago.
Mhm.
I've seen universities as my client, and
Okay.
I generally work with institutions at the senior level of administration, presidents,
Mhm.
vice presidents, provosts, deans. And I kept, at several moments, I just felt like we're not reaching departments. And departments, and I realize when I say departments, I don't mean literally departments, because some universities, and this is a very interesting conversation, some universities are literally doing away with departments. They're closing departments. They're doing away with them as an administrative unit. But so when I say department, I mean the lowest level of administration, that is, the academic unit, a program, perhaps a department, a university center, perhaps a cluster, there are lots of
The
different ways.
client-facing level.
Yeah, but this is the place. This is where students live. This is where faculty interact with students. This is where faculty do research. This is where service happens. This is where the tripartite mission of the
Mhm.
institution is carried forth.
Mhm.
And so here we are working at a very high level, right? And we don't necessarily, when we come up with a strategic plan or a strategic change initiative for a university or college, we're not necessarily thinking about implementation, about how middle management is going to translate that high level vision to the people in the front lines. We're not necessarily thinking about how that implicates departments. And so, that came up for me on so many times over the years. I mean, have you encountered that feeling, as because you do a lot of consulting yourself, right?
Right. Um, I'm concerned about the top-down approach as opposed to the bottom-up. And my thinking is that the student comes first. And I am an advocate of servant leadership. So the entire administration exists to have that student succeed. And I see that as the role of the department and the discipline. So could you elaborate on your beliefs or your
Yeah,
thoughts
I mean, I
about the
think
role
it
of
really
departments?
is. It really is. But what's happened is it's been really disempowering to both students and faculty, because we haven't thought about how to engage faculty members. And just not long ago, I was at a university where I was giving a public talk about an institution-wide shift, and and this was a catalyzing moment for me. It was earlier in 2021, and the question that kept coming back to me is to say, yeah, but how do we bring departments into this? Because what happens is you have departments say, oh, well, that's not going to work in my discipline, and then you have discipline discussions that take place at our national conferences, and they say, oh, that's not going to work at my university. So I got to thinking, how are we going to bring people together where we can triangulate that in a
Bring
way,
different levels together.
bring different levels together, bring people together in different disciplines, similar disciplines. And I just got to thinking about this, because right now we have institutions that are operating in crisis, and administrators are feeling as though, and I was one, right? I was a senior administrator. We're feeling a sense of urgency and crisis, and the faculty aren't coming along, right? And so we have to, as senior administrators, having to make decisions about the strategic plan and things without necessarily thinking what's happening at the lower level, at the department level, the program level, whatever you want to call it, the post department level.
Mhm.
Um, and what happens is that's very disempowering to faculty members, and it fundamentally undermines our commitment to shared governance.
Now, is
Which
that a limitation of the department and the discipline?
departments are where faculty live,
Right.
right? And a department is a source of power for faculty,
Hmm.
right? So if we make departments less powerful, then in the process we make faculty less powerful. We disempower faculty if we erode that. So one of the puzzles that I've been working on is to say, okay, how are we going to restore power to the faculty so that our universities can continue to be the creative spaces where faculty can be, fully engaged in shared governance, and that their ideas can flourish, and that we're going to continue to have a commitment to intellectual freedom, which is so important to our work. And that's that's my post-COVID epiphany, that
Epiphany.
I figured out how to, and
How to
I'm
do it?
moving into, I think so, and I'm
Okay,
moving
that's our
into
next topic then:
implementation now.
faculty
So it's from
leadership
that.
and shared governance. And I have lots of questions about shared governance, but go ahead, you go first.
Yeah, no, geez, after that, I want to hear what your questions are about shared governance. So you're the boss
What
here.
is governance? What is governance? And what is it that governance should decide regarding higher education, regarding an institution of higher education?
Well, it's different at every institution, and
Mhm.
some institutions, their faculty governance is managed differently, and some, I've worked at institutions where you have sort of a whole town hall kind of approach to faculty. Like it's like a New England town hall, and everybody participates. Whereas other institutions I've worked at has a smaller faculty senate with a representative system interacting with administration. But there's a sense of like, there's certain day-to-day management of the institution that the administrators have, the deans and provosts and presidents, and then there's certain aspects about the intellectual mission, the research agenda of particular faculty, and the teaching, the curriculum. What does it mean for, what do we want an anthropology major, for example, to know in order to graduate from our program? And that was the domain of the faculty.
Right.
But what's happened is they're encroaching.
But as you pointed out earlier, there's a market aspect to this that one must consider. Should the faculty member be responsible for the marketing aspect, or should it be administration?
Right. No, and the faculty doesn't want to be involved with that. But what's happened is the situation has gotten a little messy, whereas the market and business decisions that happen at the administrative level are starting to creep into the faculty domain and usurp some of the power, I think. And here I'm painting with a really broad brush, and without using particular case studies, which I'm not prepared to do today without I just I flag it as a concern. And it's something that I think is important. And so what I really want to devote the rest of my career to is kind of, what I'm calling department level. Again, it's a, department, post-department, academic unit, university center, to bring faculty leadership together and empower them with the information that they need to be effective leaders, knowing full well that your typical department chair is not somebody who has aspired to, a powerful position. It's not a powerful position. A faculty chair is often somebody who has drawn the short straw, right? And now they're doing service
to his or her discipline.
Yes, and now they're doing service, which is a benevolent thing to do, and we ask so much of them. And
I'm going to interrupt you.
Not.
Let's go back to when you became, I'll call it a research department leader.
Yeah.
I would think, this is a bias, I suppose, that every leader's motivation is to grow his or her organization, regardless of the size. It could be a small organization or it could be a large organization, and they always wanted to make it bigger, better, louder, faster, stronger, all of that. Yeah. So is that what governance is? And at what level should that be?
Well, I mean, I don't want to sound like I'm a right size advocate or anything, but I think part of the culture shift that we need to work on right now is to focus more on the outcomes of our work, which are it's not necessarily about volume, but that we can measure to say that, we served a certain number of students. Maybe it was a large number, maybe it was a small number, but the students that we served had a transformative experience, and they're better, and that we can measure that. And
now, is that supporting student and faculty success?
Yeah.
Talk more about that, if you would.
Well, my concern is that our pedagogy and administrative structures have not kept pace with the changing times, right? And I think that higher education, I see, for me personally, the work that I have found most fulfilling is high impact practices. And it's just sort of, you imagine an overlapping Venn diagram of faculty innovation, student hands-on learning, and community engagement. I think higher education is at the best when we find that sweet spot where students have a meaningful experience. Faculty are doing what they do with innovation, and we see a direct result in the community. And then there's a sort of symbiotic relationship between students benefiting the community as much as they have the capacity to, knowing full well that they're there for an education, and the community is then, creating opportunities for faculty and students in a way that is mutually agreeable. And so, I think that when we are tied to old pedagogies, and here I'm hesitating. I'm speaking. I'm hesitating because I know that some of the things I have to say are unpopular, and I don't want to alienate people. But I think we need to take a hard look at things like the lecture, especially after post-COVID. Is that really the best way to spend time that faculty and students have together? When, on your typical, I don't know. So again, I'll use anthropology as an example. So on your typical Monday morning at 10 a.m., how many thousands of anthropology professors are giving the same exact lecture in their intro anthropology class across the country? And some of the lectures are good, some are not.
And well, I had a prof who would explain, and I have the books behind me, that there's a reason that the lecture has survived thousands of years.
Yeah.
So there's something about it. There's something about the lecture.
Yeah, and I enjoy a lecture. I love lectures.
If we were to think of survival of the fittest, it has survived all kinds of.
No doubt, and there's a place for it. There's absolutely a place for it. But I'm excited about flipping the classroom. Not to, and what I want to suggest is you're not diminishing by saying, "Geez, maybe we ought to take a look at lecture." I'm not saying faculty is less important and we should automate that. I'm saying let's think about what are the best ways to deliver information so that we can free up faculty time so that they can have a more robust interaction with students.
And is that your new path forward?
So the new path forward for me, for my business, is thinking about how I can serve departments and departments, programs, centers. COVID, one of the silver linings with COVID is that we learned that there are certain things that we can do online, right? And so in the past, I used to see my client as universities. Now I see my client as university departments, centers, programs, units. I used to see my interaction at a senior level of administration. Now I feel like I can work with faculty. And the reason why is because our ability to use technology in 2021, so much better than it was in 2019, means that I can now afford to provide a really high level of service and curated content to department level leaders at a price point that they can afford. And I can bring together, I mean, the three basic ways that I'm organizing this new model is, one, discipline-based cohorts. So let's say I bring together anthropologists from around the country to think about.
Well, in fact, I'm gonna interrupt you.
Yeah.
I'm gonna interrupt you and ask, what would be the takeaway? What is the thing you want people to know precisely about this? And we have 30 seconds, my friend. 30 seconds.
Time is. We're having so much fun, David. I would say that if faculty and administrators at the university and college level are interested in thinking how they could better support their departments and the mission of the department, the service, teaching, and research, through curated content, through workshops, and bringing people together in cohorts, either discipline-based or pre-existing teams, then I would love to talk with them and
That's the
explain to
takeaway.
them this new vision.
Okay,
About
so
how
the
to do
call
that.
to action.
The call to action is, let's think differently. Let's turn universities upside down and inside out, because I think the future of higher education is going to be determined at the department level.
And if people want to learn more, how do they contact you?
So my links here on LinkedIn, 𝐃𝐨𝐧'𝐭, or High Impact Departments is the name of my business. Thaddeus at high-impactdept.com, or highimpactdept.com is where you can find me. And it's
Well,
all new content that I'm frantically getting ready and putting out right now, and with a bunch of new releases happening over the next couple weeks.
That's great. Well, thank you for being my guest. Our guest tonight was Thaddeus Gouldbranson, PhD. He is the CEO and principal of High Impact Departments, LLC. I'm David Johnson from Transform Ed Consulting. And thanks again to Cassandra Williams. She is the brains behind Educational Innovation 360 Degrees, and she let us use her platform. Thanks a lot, Thad, and thank you to our audience who joined us this evening, and see you next time.
Thank you so much. Thanks, David. Thanks, everybody.